Hello Sword Fam, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Brittany and today I am joined by my good friend Julian Schuetze.
Yeah, I'm one of the founding members of the Historical Combat Collective. I think I did a video here once upon a time.
Maybe.
Who knows? And yeah, so I have a degree in physical education, coaching, kinesiology, so I figured I'd come by and talk some shop about coaching in the club and all that. Specifically today, we're going to be looking at overall student investment and responsibility and how you as a coach can actually really help get people invested in their own training and overall learn more.
What's really exciting is that because Julian has all of this formal education in coaching, it provides a lot of really great resources for the HEMA community. A lot of folks end up teaching because they are just the most advanced person in their group, or there's no group in their area, so they get one started and they kind of become a de facto instructor or coach. So actually being able to inject a little bit of academics into how we teach our students, how we run our school, things like that ends up being extremely valuable. As Julian already covered, what we're going to be talking about is student investment and responsibility, which maybe might not seem like a coaching thing because what we're trying to do is get our students more involved in their own training and their own learning. So what role exactly is there for a coach to play in that regard?
Basically everything, right? If you really want to get into some of the specifics of terminology and what roles who have where,
yeah.
Everybody essentially can be a coach. You can have your instructors, you can have the people who run the school locations, whatever it might be, and then you have the coach. And the coach's entire responsibility is just helping people get better.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's hard to do that. Not only is there lots of different schools of thoughts about, well, what mechanisms do you use to get people to get better, but then everybody is different. You and I learn differently. We all know that idea of like, oh, are you an auditory learner, a physical learner? And that is also just grotesquely oversimplifying it, where everybody's in between. And some people, you also talk about internal, external. It becomes a very convoluted mess very quickly. And it's hard. And one of the main important parts about learning how to coach and all that is really just getting to know people. And one of the easiest things you can do just to get people to learn more is that idea of responsibility, where people will learn more when it comes a little bit more from them. And what I mean by that is, if you think about, let's imagine a situation, someone comes into a class, they go, the instructor man or woman will tell me what to do, and then I will leave.
Yeah, it's that idea of like spoon feeding, like you're gonna come in, you're gonna do this, and this, and then you go home and rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah, and that can work to inject curriculum into people, but even if you just start doing little seeds about getting people to think more about, well, what do I need to work on?
Sure.
Because it's all about questioning and critical thinking to an extent. So even if you just pose a question here and there, what do you think you need to work on?
Right.
Then people go, a lot of people who aren't used to that, the face goes blank, and then they go, I don't know.
We ran into this the other night teaching. We were doing the crump, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this from the dominant side, and it's going to be a true edge. And everybody, I explained how to do it, and I kind of spoon feed it to them, and they go on their way. And then I changed the drill. I'm like, okay, now we're just going to do it from our non-dominant side. We're going to use the false edge. Good luck. And just the glazing over of like, well, can you show me how to do that? And it's like, nope, I've given you all the tools, I've given you all the resources, you need to apply them and figure it out. If you end up in like roadblocks or you kind of stumble, then I'll kind of help guide you, but really it's developing that critical thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's always about that critical thinking, because if you apply it literally anywhere, the more students can learn to apply it everywhere, then just the overall, the benefit they will get from it is so much higher.
Right.
Because I brought a very simplistic idea of, oh, they show up to class, they just get told what to do and then they leave. But even if you have someone who's just super into it, but then they don't necessarily think critically about their own development in certain points, like let's say sparring.
Sure.
You have someone who comes in, they do class, they do sparring after, and then like from a coaching perspective, I'll go, hey, so how did it go? And then if someone's not thinking critically about the development yet, they'll just go, oh, it was good.
Yeah, it was good. I got hit I hit them, I think I'm doing well. Or it's like a win-lose perspective of like, yeah, I beat so-and-so in sparring. And there's really no nuance to like,
exactly.
How did you do? What did you do?
How do you get better,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even just simple, like quick little leading questions going, oh, well, what'd you get hit by? And sometimes you'll have students who go, I don't know. And isn't that a problem,
sure.
right? And that's not a skill that a lot of people have, because we can talk about that idea of like, the skills I developed to be a coach, but then there's also skills to be a recipient of knowledge and like learn how to learn.
How to be a good student for yourself.
How to be a good learner.
Yeah.
That's not easy either. And that idea of giving them some responsibility for their own training helps them get there much sooner, which as a coach also then makes your job easier.
Right, yeah, exactly. So then what are some ways that, like for me as an instructor, how can I try to encourage my students to be more interested in being an active seeking student as opposed to just like, I'm just receiving knowledge? What can I do to help kind of build that and foster that?
A very easy way, I'm going to say that a lot. Here's an easy way, because there's
everything's easy with Julian.
Coaches hate him with this one simple trick. None of it isn't like hard. Sure. It's just there's lots of little things you can do that once you amass all of them, suddenly it seems like some big undertaking.
Right.
But even just getting people to talk about their training is one of the best ways to do that.
Right.
And you can do that, one of my favorite ways is just a debrief at the end. When you talk about a cool down, a lot of people will go like, you just stretch and then you head out.
Yeah, you get some water, you stretch, and then you leave.
The cool down is a perfect time to do that. Where what I do in our classes is at the end, I have everybody group up in like pairs of 3-ish, and then I have them all talk. Name one thing you've learned today.
Yep.
Name something you've identified that you need to work on next time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, just something else. And then I leave that third option of just whatever they want.
Right.
And then you just have people talking about it. And even if at first it's going to be hard because they're not thinking critically during their training, they're going to just kind of be going,
I don't know, I guess like I did this thing and I don't know, I guess like what I learned is like it's hard to sword.
Right. And then that's also then the benefit of having them work in small groups with that is because if someone's not as comfortable with it, they can take a little bit of a step back. And then see how others who perhaps are more comfortable with it choose to approach that. And then next time they'll start, when they're training, they'll know, Julian's going to ask me what's something I need to work on next time. So I'm going to pay attention during class and figure out what I need to do next time so I'm not just stuck there awkwardly. But then that's getting them to do exactly what you want. They're thinking about what's going on with their training. And then that just helps them in the future because it's always really important to go, oh man, today this went well. Because you always start with a positive.
Right.
Always, like when we're...
Absolutely.
That's something I probably should have mentioned at some point, but never negative.
Right.
Never negative. Man, I sucked at this. No, don't do that. Because our ability to control ourselves is actually way higher than we think it are, and just language is so much more important.
Yes.
And always positive. Oh, man, this didn't go quite right for me, but next time to help fix that, I'll be able to work on this.
Absolutely.
And that is so much more important than going, oh man, I sucked at that.
Yep.
I guess I'll try this. No. Don't be negative. There's no reason to be negative. We're not going to the Olympics where perhaps if I was going to an Olympics for sword fighting maybe one day, I might be a bit more critical of myself if I didn't do something right. But it's like we're just trying to get better.
Yeah.
And always positive.
And trying to keep, I think, the perspective and the goals in mind is, like you said, we're not getting paid to do this as like athletes. We're not top performance, high performance athletics. It's, keeping that perspective, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to not know something. Really helps when it's easier to grasp that when your coach's language changes to not be negative. Like, hey, you really kind of didn't hit the mark tonight. Like, dude, that hurts so bad. And, or like you're sparring and you're getting this feedback, and the only feedback you're getting is like, you keep doing this thing wrong, you keep doing this thing wrong. And it's like, well, that's all you're hearing, right? How much better would that experience in sparring be if it was like, hey, you're doing this one thing really well, so let's utilize that to get you more success, right?
Right. Well, especially if you go, you keep hammering, you did this wrong. Well, most people know they're not doing something right anyway,
They keep
right?
getting hit again
Man, I
and
kept
again.
getting hit in the head. You
We
did
were
so
doing this
bad.
wrong.
Yeah, well, but then you don't actually even really help them tell them what's wrong,
Right, yeah.
right? So just always being like, hey, so, and then especially if you get, going back to that idea of failing is okay, that's how we learn. That is the best way to learn, is when you goofed something up and you're like, oh man, you're motivated now to not have that happen again, right? So really just foster that. So I always go, what didn't go right for you today?
Sure. Yeah.
And people go like, I wasn't happy with this. I'm like, okay, well then how are we gonna fix that? And I ask them, even if their answer is they don't know, at least if you're just asking them questions.
Right. Yeah, it's much different to identify a problem in somebody's fencing or in somebody's training and be like, hey, so this is the problem and here's how we're gonna fix it. And they go, yes, coach, I'm gonna do that thing, coach. Versus, hey, what do you think kind of maybe didn't go right today? And then they have to give you that answer. And then you go, okay, so what are some ways you think we can work on this? And it's more of a collaborative thing.
Exactly.
I think developing that relationship with a coach, building that bond of trust and open communication completely changes a fencer or even just any athlete's ability to engage with the sport and the community in a healthy way.
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't even really know where to lead off on that because you got that so perfectly. Yeah, you did. Yeah,
I'm not the worst.
Yeah. It's that coach athlete bond is one of the most important aspects of it, right? Even if a day goes terribly, you need to have that connection with your coach so you can go, oh, how can we make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yes.
And you have that level of trust with them. Well, they'll go, well, then let's work through it, right? Because it is a collaborative effort. Because they always say one of the best ways to learn is to teach.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true.
So as a coach, you're also developing yourself by helping raise other people, and you're developing your own understanding if your student perhaps didn't do well. And then,
which happens, like,
oh yeah,
and it's so easy.
I've never had anything go wrong
at
a tournament ever. No, never,
perfect, infallible.
But theoretically, for other people who perhaps things did not go quite well that day, that's why I always recommend video review. Have everybody film literally everything you do. Ideally not your coach, because your coach should be watching you. They shouldn't be watching you through the camera, making sure everything's in shot. But
having a teammate maybe be there, record.
Or just ask someone who's like, ooh, that looks cool.
Random.
Yeah, I don't know.
Somebody.
But the point is, video review is so helpful because then you and the coach can then sit down and look at it. And then again, the developmental aspect from like, I'm the coach, I am spending time analyzing this. That helps you as well. Because then you go, oh, you notice in this situation, you did not react in a way that was safe, which is why that double happened. Or, they did this, and you just didn't know what to do. So next time we'll be able to fulfill a drill or find ways to work with that. Yeah. And then that just gets them more involved, and then for you.
Absolutely. I think with the video review, that really helps get the student kind of taking responsibility and being super involved in their own training, because now they're able to actually see exactly what's going on and they can identify some of those problems themselves instead of just trusting what an outside perspective is saying, oh, you're doing this thing, or hey, this is what I've noticed. Now they actually have the visual resources to look back and reflect on it and be really invested in what they're doing.
You can take a peek at other sports, and if you look at MMA or any other combative-based sports, if you have a high-level athlete, it is very weird if they don't watch tape, right? You will always hear that. Oh, my coaches and I, we watch the tape. Yeah. And it's just so common because it's effective.
Yes.
And then in HEMA, you go to a tournament, I'll see maybe 1 or 2 phones. And that's just, it is such an easy little thing you can do. One easy trick.
One simple trick.
One simple trick. Again, just have someone film. Even if you don't look at it, then whatever. But like, it gives you that option to go, why did that happen?
Right.
Then,
and even like if you're a solo practitioner and you don't have a coach, this is one of those things that you can do to be, again, invested in your own training, taking responsibility for your own training, and starting to look at video, review it, identify like what you're doing well, what you could do better, why this thing didn't go in your favor. So even from a solo training perspective, like Julian's advice has a lot of value.
And going back to the critical thinking, you can even give them an assignment. Go, well, here's your video. I want you to identify 3 things you did very well and 2 things that you want to fix, or whatever numbers you might choose. Again, not negative. You don't want to say, find 3 things you didn't do
wrong.
well.
Yeah.
Or, you know, a good cheeky way of working around that is like, find 3 things that didn't go your way. All right, so that
language.
That kind of framed, it's not negative, but it's still
Yeah.
kind of good. But, you know, 3 things you want to work on. And that gets them to look at it and try to think about it. And then just, you know, be there and be supportive is essentially that. Build that connection, get them critically thinking about their own training, and that helps their development. That helps them think critically, not just show up, do stuff, and leave.
Yeah.
In the long run, you know, the science shows that helps tremendously.
Sure, yeah.
It's crazy how much it helps.
Of course. And I'm sure, like, from the perspective of like a club leader or a coach, for example, the rate of student retention is probably significantly higher when you have students who are invested in their own training and are being able to think critically about it. It gives them like long-term growth, I think, instead, right?
Oh yeah. If we want to get into community development
Absolutely.
as well, then that's huge, because you're also then, I mentioned before that the coach isn't always necessarily, oh, I'm coach.
Right.
But, you know, maybe your hierarchy in your club might be, but even realistically, if you have 2 people training together and one person notices, oh, that didn't go your way, you're coaching them a little bit too there.
Absolutely.
Right? Everyone's a coach.
Yep.
And then if you don't need a lot of training to ask questions.
Right.
So if your instructor, coach, club leader, you see that their style is always just asking questions, and that's very easy to reciprocate, right? So if you're drilling with someone, you notice that they flubbed, they messed something up, you know, you could go like, oh, your guard wasn't high enough, or, you know, you could just go, how did that feel?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think in a like traditional or formal school setting for like HEMA schools, you have 2 folks that are training together, and then you have the instructor, right?
Yeah.
And those 2 people maybe aren't comfortable enough, or they don't think it's appropriate to offer feedback that's maybe critical or like offering instruction in some way, and they don't really say anything, and they leave it up to the instructor to kind of eventually come around and identify that. Or in a worse scenario, you have 2 people that are training together, and instead of asking questions, they do what you just said, like, you didn't do that right, do it like this. And then you start building a bad relationship with that training partner,
Right.
and then things can start to devolve from there. But you're right, if you teach your students a way to be more critical and to communicate, build those relationships, it's going to build that community, everybody can work together, be more helpful, and take a little bit of pressure off the coach as well.
Yeah, because again, if some students have responsibility for the training, that means it's not always on the entire shoulders of the coach going, I need to get my people better.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that's still the case, but then, you know, they're helping as well. Like, there's being a good learner, there's being a bad learner.
Yeah.
It's a skill you have to develop to learn how to learn. And a lot of people miss that, because to be fair, that's very hard to identify. Especially, you know, we mentioned at the very beginning, you might be in a situation where suddenly you're put in, you know, oh, I'm in charge of the study group just because I've been doing this the longest.
Yeah, there's nothing in my area, I guess I'm gonna start it and be the person.
Yeah, and then it's so hard to figure out those little details that, you know, academics hammer down really hard.
Right.
They're like, always ask questions, leading questions, and then it's burrowed in my brain, but that doesn't come organically.
Right, you definitely have to learn how to learn, and then learn how to teach. It's like you have to just perpetually learn.
You have to learn how to teach people on how to learn.
To learn.
Yeah.
To learn.
Yes.
Coaching is one of those things that I think the HEMA community and just the greater sword community in general would really benefit from an academic perspective, obviously, because a lot of folks just sort of fall into those roles. So obviously, Julian has a lot of knowledge in that case, and how do we get a hold of you if we got questions?
Yeah, if you ever want to shoot me like a message, you got questions, I'm more than open to that. I have my Facebook, I have Instagram, I have Discord. That's what I usually tend to use, but whatever. We'll figure it out. We'll put some links down below or something like that. If you ever do find yourself in the lower mainland of British Columbia, BC, Canada, the Historical Combat Collective, we've got 3 locations. We got one in Victoria, Abbotsford, Vancouver, the one I'm in charge of. Drop us a line on the website and come say hello. We'd love to say hi back.
And as always, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Jules, always a pleasure.
Always. Yeah!
Yeah!
If you're enjoying the sword content and want a little bit more, please consider joining me on Patreon. And thank you so much to all of my Patreon supporters.